Hello everyone, my name is AJ, and I don't have a good intro. Today I'm going to be redesigning Beelzebub from Hell of a Boss for my medieval AU, Heck of a Boss. Beelzebub's design is pretty darn controversial within the fandom. Some people like it, some people hate it. As I am with most issues, I'm in the middle. I like it. Shapes and colors, the likes of which I've never seen. But at the same time, it's a mess. It's a mess. The longer you look at it, the worse it gets. Her hair at the top is all fiery, and then the rest of it, including her tail, is supposed to be lava, which doesn't quite fit with the energy because it's so goopy. She's also supposed to have a lava lamp stomach, but the teal that's in the lava makes it really confusing as to what it's supposed to be. Her shirt blends in really bad with her stomach. I don't understand why they didn't either take the pink out of the lava on her tummy or make her shirt a different color. It's just really unreadable. Her little bug wings don't look like they're connected to anything and feel fairly out of place. Her bra strap is visible, but she's got a window to expose the fluff, so what is this strap connected to? It's clearly not holding anything up. There are a ton of little details everywhere that crowd the design and make it hard to look at. I hate her shorts, I think they look stupid. It's just a mess, there's so much going on. The biggest offense I've seen of this design is that, well, of course it's a lot. She's the sin of gluttony, and gluttony is overindulgence. Of course this would be an overindulgent design, and I get that. When I look at this, all I see is overindulgence. Unfortunately, I don't see the sin of gluttony. There's a difference between a gluttony design and a gluttonous design. There's a way to do this without the design and your animators by extension needing to suffer. If I were fixing it, this is what I would change it to, but I'm not fixing it. Right now, I'm doing my own design for my own thing. I had a lot of different sources of inspiration to work with for this design. Since Hell of a Boss Beelzebub is supposed to be a fox, I thought I would use a Kitsune, which I have just discovered is just the Japanese word for fox, but I'm talking specifically about the yokai. You all know what I mean, the one with the 9 tails. These spirits are known to bring good luck, but they can also be tricksters, and they are known to either transform into or possess women so they can seduce men and eat their hearts. There are 13 types of Kitsune. I didn't know that. I didn't have time this week to research that in depth, so we're just gonna say that she's one of them bad ones. I didn't just make her a Kitsune. This is the sin of overindulgence, so I hope you'll forgive me for overindulging. I would be remiss if I didn't include a bit of Oni into my Japanese demon design. Oni are kind of like the Japanese equivalent of Christian demons. In fact, they're more like the pop culture depiction of Christian demons than Christian demons actually are. In reality, Christian demons don't have bodies, so wouldn't have any appearance. But if they did have an appearance, they would look like perfectly normal people because they were intended to be human souls before they got themselves kicked out. Oni, on the other hand, do have bodies. They're like trolls. They live in caves and hell and stuff, and they're red with horns, and their favorite activities include murder and cannibalism. Cannibalism, in my opinion, is the most gluttonous thing you could ever do, and I think combining a Kitsune's tendency to eat human hearts with an Oni's tendency to just eat the whole guy married each other very well. But we're not done yet. Beelzebub famously is a fly, but there actually aren't many fly demons from other mythologies that I was able to use as her mother, unless I looked over something major. Beelzebub really is like the fly, the only fly, the fly to end all flies. The best fit that I was able to find is the Adzi from U Folklore, which for my fellow uneducated fellows is from Ghana, Africa. This creature is a firefly vampire that preys on people at night but will turn into a human upon capture. They are also said to be able to possess people. This creature was likely invented to explain the effects of sickness and anemia brought on by kissing bugs. Also, Lucifer has to be her dad. So this is very clearly a very strange mixing of cultures and creatures that I have to make work not only visually but also story-wise. Let me start with visuals. Since we have so many different things that need to be incorporated into this, I couldn't possibly put it all into one design. There's simply too much to make a singular cohesive design. That's part of the reason why Beelzebub's design from the show was such a mess. There were too many sources of inspiration included: bees, hellhounds, lava lamps, the fox from her Die Young video, Kesha, honey, hearts, gluttony, and then she didn't simplify any of it at all. So I think I've put myself on a fairly level playing field by having too much to work with and only one character to fiddle it all on, so I had to come up with a more creative solution. Kabuki masks are a type of mask from Japanese theater. These masks are usually very visually distinct from one another and usually go with impressive costuming so that the audience can tell the characters apart easily from a distance. My idea with these masks was to give Beelzebub at least 2 masks, each one with a distinct outfit and bodily differences. Can you tell that I hate myself yet? The first mask I did was the Kitsune mask. I started by gathering together all of my references, including some of the references I would use later for the second mask. My first idea was to combine a geisha with a Kitsune together, but I already did that. I fumbled around with that for a while, but I just wasn't happy, so I decided to do something I'd never done before. I decided to lean a little bit more into the Ghana culture to make this more unique from my previous work. I was originally intending to use the Adze just as a part to inform her species, but I think it would be a waste of opportunity to not use some of that culture. This was very outside of my comfort zone. I don't know half as much about Ghana and their culture, both current and historic, as I do about Japan. And on top of that, I was pressed for time because I got hit in the face with a brick that is surprise family reunion that's actually been planned for 3 years that I didn't know about. Instead of the usual process of building up my visual library along with my knowledge of history over a period of weeks, months, or even years, I focused entirely on the visual part. From what I was able to gather, there's a lot of brightly colored cloth wraps where the emphasis is on patterns and details of the cloth rather than on the complexity of the way they're styled and cut. For royalty, which is my focus right now because she's a princess, there's a lot of jewelry, and it seems like especially a lot of gold jewelry, so this presents issue number 2. I have to figure out a way to stylize all this detail into something that can be easily animated without losing the visual spirit of the culture, and also combining it with a Japanese geisha. I'm ending myself today at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in a very deep puddle, so I put one of those wraps over her shoulder down to below the knee. Under that, I put in the undergarments that usually go under the kimono coat part. I don't know what that's called. I struggled with the hair for longer than you would think, but thankfully, the Hermit sketched something for me that I loved. She has an animation channel, and you should check it out. She made this for me. It's very cool. So I give her a bunch of bun covers going down her head like a mohawk with her little wing shards poking out of them. I wanted her to have a more wild energy though, and constricted, tightly wound buns don't really help with that. That's too put together, so I decided on top of that to have some free-flowing braids that I shaped into the same shape I had for her hair before. I put a few rings in there too, but didn't want to overdo it since there's already so much detail. After that, I gave her a few bracelets. I noticed that big beads were pretty common in the pictures I was able to find, so I glued a beaded bracelet to 2 normal ones, so we have a singular thick bracelet that should be easier to animate than free-flowing beads. Something I discovered in my research is that the ideal body type for Japanese women back in the day was a smooth, flat silhouette. Something that women would do is they would put padding around their waist to hide their curves. I wanted to give her more exaggerated body proportions to convey how energetic she is, but for this form I wanted to be more historically accurate. So I thickened up the waist and gave her a pat on there for good measure. Her waist still looks slightly more snatched than I intended it to, though because I put some bunching around the waist tie because the fabric is fairly loose. This is what she looks like with no mask. As you can see, the waist is not snatched. The last thing I added was 8 tails, with the 9th being the insect butt that's covered up. I was going to add 4 arms, but there's already so much going on with this 4 that I decided to leave them off. I also sort of left off the wings. I decided to repurpose them for a transparent cape around the shoulders. It can turn into her wings, but they're not out all the time to keep this design a little bit more animation friendly. I tried to use her original color palette because it's so bright, and I really do like that, but I just don't work well with super bright colors like this. They hurt my eyes. I like it when other people do it, but I just can't. Besides that, she would look super out of place against my other designs because of how bright she would be relative to them. So instead, I found a yellow, orange, and red palette with a bit of green in it and then muted it a little bit and used that instead. So she still looks brightly colored, even in relation to my other characters, but she still fits the color palette and doesn't look like she was dropped in from a different property. I made her wrap a red with orange detailing that I tried to keep fairly simple, at least relative to actual Ghanaian dress. I tried to make the patterning kind of look vaguely like organs, but it looks more like what's it called? Dang it. Not orange. Not an orange. What's it called? Honeydew? It's not called that. Grapefruit. She kind of looks more like a grapefruit. But I think that fits still. All of those orbs and jewelry I made the same orange, which is a tad different because usually I use the same color for gold no matter what, but this time it just made sense. I made her wings a nice see-through green and she was all done. The maskless version I actually drew after doing both of her masks, but this seemed like the best place to put this. Without a mask, she has no face, only mouth. Like I mentioned earlier, I tried to keep her torso nice and smooth, but also boxy, for lack of a better word. There is a slight dip in there to make the pose more interesting, but it's not like canon to the universe. Sometimes things that you draw to make the art look good aren't canon within universe, like how in Peppa Pig, the character doesn't actually have two eyes on either side of their head, that's just the style. In my art, the characters aren't actually built like toothpicks with the exception of a few of my skinny queens. That's just the art style. It really bothers me when people look at Vivzia's art or Barbie dolls or anime and hate on it for all of the characters being skinny as if it's a threat to their obesity. Of course the proportions are unrealistic. It's a cartoon! In Vivzia's art, almost all of the characters' heads are the same width of their shoulders, if not larger. If you don't like a lack of body diversity, that's fine. I think it's lazy for every character to have the exact same body type like it's a cartoon from the 90s created to sell action figures. What I don't like is people acting like this problem is the biggest deal in the world and genuinely getting pressed about it. Sincerely, Touch Grass. Signed, an artist that got told one of her skeletons was too skinny. The final mask I did was the Oni that we talked about earlier. This was the one I was most excited to draw. I got the idea for it while I was bored in the car listening to some Lady Gaga, and then this strong, independent woman invaded my brain. I wanted her to look as free and unbothered by social constraints as I could possibly have her. Since my AU is happening at around the time of the Black Death vaguely, I'm trying to leave it a little unclear so I can get away with more historical inaccuracies. The world is very sexist. Sexism developed in almost every country in the exact same way, with the exception of beauty, which was different from every culture. Women in almost every single culture were expected to be homemakers, and being a homemaker requires a kind of gentleness and restraint in order to raise emotionally healthy children. With this second design, I wanted to abandon all traditionally feminine traits, especially elegance and gentleness. There's this concept known as the Madonna and the Whore, where women, especially beautiful women, are expected to either be pure and innocent, or the exact opposite of those things. I thought that I would use that concept to inform the two forms. When she's in her Kitsune mask, she is either Madonna or Whore, depending on what people think of her. She will adjust herself to cater to their expectations, so she can more easily manipulate them. When she's in the Oni mask, she's free to truly be herself, because in her Oni mask, she's hideous. There are a lot fewer expectations put upon ugly women. A patriarchal system does not concern itself with women it considers undesirable. With no expectations on her and all the power of the sin of gluttony itself, she's free to be and do whatever she wants. And as lovely a thought as this empowerment is, letting Beelzebub do whatever she wants is actually a bad thing, as we'll get to. I gave her a big coat so that she would have plenty of screen presence while still being a very teeny tiny little troll. Underneath that, only a skirt for the most basic of modesty, unless you count the skin suit. If you look real close around the neck, you can see where the skin is bunching around the suit. She's got a lot more skin under there, but it's held back by the human skin. I wanted to make this form look like it's just one step away from going full demon. I gave her some ivy wrapped around her body to reference Dionysus, the Greek god of wine, and other stuff that I forget. I was going to include some grapes too, but there was already enough going on. The shapes of the leaves is wrong. They were hard to draw, so I drew them incorrectly. I thought about making her hair greasy and going straight down and wispy and broken at the ends, but I didn't like it, so I made it a big white bush instead, with her hairline being real far back so she's nice and bald. I also gave her two big orb necklaces that might be eggs instead of beads. Who knows? I did make certain to draw her second pair of arms and her wings in this version since there's not quite as much going on this time. Also, fun fact, her Kitsune mask is porcelain. This one is covered in skin. Since the color of Gluttony is yellow, I wanted to make certain that the yellow was the focal color of this design, even if it didn't take up the most surface area. Last time it did, this time it didn't. So to still make it the focus, I made her head bright yellow. Usually Oni are a bright red, but they can be other colors too, like black or blue. This one is yellow. Her teeth I actually decided to make black. It used to be a thing in ancient Japan where women would color their teeth black. This usually only happened with married women, which caused Europeans to think that women were purposely being uglified to prevent infidelity, but it's more likely that this was just a styling thing that Westerners didn't like. I don't care that it only happened after marriage, I'm doing it now! Ancient Japanese people really liked strong contrast in their artwork and styling, so if you looked at the artwork and clothing from this time, it's a lot of red, black, and white. Pale complexions were really favored, especially for women, because it meant that you didn't need to go outside and work, which would make you tan. Other societies that had lighter-skinned people had similar standards, like the Egyptians and Greeks. They usually liked their women to be pale and the men to be much darker because the men are supposed to take care of their women. A pale face with dark black teeth has a lot of contrast to it, so that's why I think they considered it pretty. I don't think it's that different than thinking that painted black nails or lips is pretty. Since she's not trying to be pretty in this form, her real skin tone is on display. Very dark. Lucifer's dumb white jeans barely did anything. In her previous form, her skin was actually pale, but it's underneath black fur for contrast. I also decided to make her waist smaller in this version. Not only does the really skinny waist not match the beauty standards of the ancient Japanese, it doesn't match ancient Ghana beauty standards either. In a lot of African societies, including Ghana, I'm pretty certain, I didn't have time to research it that in detail this week, the ideal body type is what we consider fat, ranging from a bit pudgy all the way to looking like you're pregnant. So for both of her cultures, Beelzebub's body type is undesirable in this form, but to Westerners, the hourglass is desirable. Beauty is weird, isn't it? The last form is, of course, the demon form. I love drawing demon forms, and I think I've made quite a few good ones, but this might be some of my best work yet. I started by drawing just the Oni head. It's just a spooky demon head. Nothing weird here except the eyes. I tried to make them look raised and bulbous, and then boom! The Kitsune head is split in half and teeth, lots of teeth. How I want this form to work is there's a completely normal fox head on either side, and when closed, completely conceal the real head. Then, when they open up, the real head is in full view. And to make it even worse, I put hands in there instead of tongues. So now there's one bigger pair of arms for extra stability and yoinking purposes, and I also put a smaller pair of hands right up next to the face, like the spider yoinkies, whatever you call those. I also gave her some antenna at the top of her head to listen for electrical signals and smell for you, since her eyes are pretty bad in this form. But I might remove those. They're kind of too much, and the way that I did them looks a tad stupid. I hope I did that later off camera, and I hope you can't hear that car that just went by. That was a particularly loud one. After that, it was time to work on the body. My idea was to combine the basic body of a fox with the body of a firefly, where there's fur poking out where it shouldn't be and an exposed exoskeleton. Something just par for the course, and then I started adding a lot more hands, and then I added a big fat belly, and that idea, while still intact, involves a lot more human bits, which makes it scarier. I had to shrink her down to get the wings involved without covering up too much of her body, because I do need a good reference of this. Besides that, it makes her look even bigger, and bigger is better. I made her abdomen nice and fat and heavy so that it drags on the ground. I put some more legs and hands on it so that she can more easily drag herself around. While I was at it, I made the belly even bigger, and while I was at it, I added dog nibbles. And I thought about removing them because they were so gross, but then I decided to leave them in because they are so gross. Colors were pretty straightforward. I just combined the palettes of the two forms and put everything in as you would expect. So we first get introduced to Bee with one of the most boring pop songs ever written. She's supposed to have one of those 2010s Kesha type vibes to her, but her song just didn't quite have that oomph that really makes you want to dance. The second thing you immediately notice about Bee is that she swears in sentences where it doesn't make sense, and then she brings up her vagina like she's a female comedian. Thanks, Vivzy. Truly, you have proven definitively that women can be funny too. The reason this bothers me is because it doesn't work here. We already have Blitz, Luna, and Mammon around to be the vulgar ones. Beelzebub and Asmodeus can't be the vulgar ones too. Not every character can be the vulgar one. I think being vulgar doesn't work for Kesha B more than the other characters because it feels so forced. You can really tell that this is just not a natural or normal way of speaking. With Blitz and Mammon, it feels natural because they're emotionally immature jerkwads that make the lives of the people around them worse both on purpose and on accident. It doesn't feel like the fault of writing when their dialogue is awkward. It feels natural because they're the type of characters that would actually talk like that in real life. It also makes sense for Luna because she's emotionally immature but in a different way and lashes out frequently, where she's trying on purpose to be really edgy and get people to leave her alone. Being overly crass in general is just an emotionally immature thing to do. Being overly crass is something you do in middle and high school to prove to people how edgy and mature you are. When you get older though, you realize that just because you can swear doesn't mean you have to or should. If you swear too frequently, it loses all weight, so then when you really need an intense word to say, the only vulgar language left for you to use that you don't use in every single sentence is slurs. My point is that I think it would be wise for B not to swear at every other sentence, so that when she does choose to swear, it has more weight. I also find it bizarre that Luna, a dog, is not allowed to say the B word and it's treated like a slur, but B, a fox, is allowed to say it. And you can justify this by saying, well, B's a sin, so no one is going to call her out on it, she's too powerful. This is again doing too much work on behalf of the writer. There are ways that you could have conveyed this to the audience without just having characters say it, but they didn't do that, so it's not real, it's just headcanon. That entire section of the episode could have been removed to make room for other better things. B went on some kind of rant about her stealing Belphegor's drugs, which I do like. She says that she's an a-hole and knows it and is proud of it, and I actually really like that. I think it's a wonderful direction to take the character, but they didn't commit to it. They made her a genuinely nice and caring person. We could have had some insightful commentary here about how embracing being a bad person instead of trying to hide it, while slightly more palatable, still makes you a bad person. There are people online that harass others online and then act like they're proud of being bad when they're called out for it, so it doesn't matter. If you're aware that you're insufferable to be around, why wouldn't you take steps to better yourself? I feel like that makes you worse than if you're unaware that you're an a-hole. Also, I don't know if I fully believe that she's aware that she's terrible. In one of the episodes, we're shown the Hellhound orphanage that Luna grew up in, and it's absolutely terrible. It's more like a pound or a prison than a place for any child to be. And we can see on the adoption certificate that it's signed by Beelzebub. Clearly she has some kind of involvement in these pounds, but so far no one has acknowledged that. Maybe it will be touched on in future episodes. I hope it will be so I can eat my words, but right now I have very little faith in Vivsy to acknowledge the actual faults of her characters, because it seems like most of the faults appeared there by accident from serious world building or writing oversights. I plan to go more in detail with this when I get around to designing Stolas, or if I make a series where I review each episode one by one. For now, suffice it to say, I'm not happy. I would really love to be proven wrong, but at this point in the series, I don't have any hope that anything will get better. Beelzebub isn't even truly gluttonous. She and Blitz had a drink off and Blitz won, and instead of being salty about him showing her hump, she was concerned about him drinking too much. The sin of gluttony was worried that someone was drinking too much. She told Luna to take him home because he was partying to forget his problems and not to have fun. I think she's supposed to literally feed off of the vibes of the people around her, and Blitz being the way he is doesn't taste very good and makes her feel sick, but she's not even the slightest bit annoyed about that, and maybe that's a fault of delivery, but right now it feels more like a fault of direction. She's genuinely concerned for him. I hate this. This is boring and dramaless. The point of gluttony in its truest form is that it's bad. You can indulge sometimes and have it not be gluttonous. The morality of this universe is based off of Christian mythology, right? Well, what about Christmas? We have feasts. That's indulgence. The line between indulgence and gluttony is that gluttony is indulgence to the point where it harms either you or the people around you. If B is kicking people out of her party that are drinking to the point where they're causing problems, she is denouncing actual gluttony. She is denying her own sin. She is embracing moderation. We didn't even get to see Blitz actually causing problems other than kissing Dennis a little too much, which seems like perfectly normal club behavior to me. although my judgment on this can't be fully trusted here because I was very sheltered as a kid, so from my perspective, all bars are dens of debauchery and the club is the devil's hangout spot. Y'all are already sinning. I don't know where the line is for you people. And if you're my audience, you don't know either. None of you have ever been to the club. You're all underage, depressed, and gay. I think the reason why we didn't get to see any Blitz misbehaving shenanigans is either because it would make us not like him, or it would take longer to animate than just having B say it. Probably both. I get that. You need to keep the budget down, but even still, show don't tell? Show don't tell? Those are the rules! Show don't tell! I wish I had more to say about her, but this episode is frankly really boring and almost nothing happened. She does appear in the Mastermind episode too, but doesn't have a lot to do. That's totally fine, there wasn't a lot of room for her to do much, and frankly, out of the 3 sins that we've met so far, she should be the most impartial. In that episode, she's the first to suggest that Blitz probably didn't try to kill Stolas, and then Ozzy backs her up. If I were writing this, I would have reversed that. Ozzy should be the one that has the stronger opinion because he's dating Blitz's childhood friend, and Blitz has already done him 2 favors by this point. She should have either been completely neutral or leaning slightly towards, he's kind of bad though. I do like that she hates Mammon and makes fun of him even more than Ozzy does. I think that's very interesting and I want to know more about their history. What could Mammon do to make B hate him? I must know. I need more information about my king, my prince, my sweet baby boy. So how do I fix all this? I'm at a bit of a loss. I think almost everything that happened in that episode needs to go. It's just such a snooze fest. It felt like an excuse to put Luna in a cute dress and introduce hot furry girl number 6000. I think step number 1 would be to include some actual kind of conflict. There needs to be something more tangible for Luna to overcome so the episode is actually about her instead of shifting to being about Blitz being a mess of a person again. I think it's super lame that the only conflict in the story is awkward young adult drama that doesn't go anywhere, and then later Blitz holding his daughter's social life back by parentalizing her, which is resolved in like 2 seconds, and she's not even mad at him at the end of it. This could have been a good way to put some actual conflict between the two so we can get a better idea of why Luna is always so annoyed at him. I think the best way to include some actual intrigue here is to start by first changing Beelzebub's characterization entirely. She doesn't really even have a personality to speak of other than generic party girl that swears, so let's make her actually evil. First step, cannibalism. I think cannibalism, like I said earlier, is the most gluttonous thing that anyone could ever do. The reason why Alistair's sin is gluttony and not pride is because he eated people. Beelzebub partakes in this by eating babies. From the pound, she eats babies. I was thinking that the reason why she holds parties for hellhounds instead of higher-ranking demons is so that the hellhounds will procreate at her parties and their puppies will end up at the pound so she can eat them. Just like Mammon likes watching human beings spend their entire lives in pursuit of money only to have none of that when they die, Beelzebub likes watching humans eat themselves to death or indulge in their addictions or hobbies to the point where they're done. She especially likes the overeating because in the afterlife they'll still be fat and now they're easy targets for other sinners, or alternatively no longer able to feel full no matter how much they eat. Food-related torture is just her favorite thing. It brings her such joy. Something that I always thought was kind of weird about the original is that Beelzebub is dating, what's his face? Vortex. It's Vortex. Well, he's just a random hellhound. He's the bodyguard to Verosica, who's a pop star, so I guess it's not impossible for them to have met and for him to be special enough for her to pay attention to him. I'm certain that a girl this pretty is probably getting hit on at every single party, so Vortex is going to need a little bit of something in order to set him apart from the crowd. I still think it's a little weird though, because they didn't really talk enough to establish any kind of chemistry between each other. I had this idea that she doesn't actually love him. No. She's manipulating him. She thinks that hearts full of love are the tastiest kind, but she doesn't get to eat many of those because sinners are so rotten. In order to actually eat one, she has to not just seduce, but get someone to fall head over heels in love with her for an extended period of time so it forms into actual love and not just attraction. Then she eats them. She's playing the long game with Vortex. To him, it's a long time, but to an immortal being, a year is nothing. It might be interesting if instead of Vortex starting the series already in a relationship with her, that they start by dating in that episode, so Luna has to watch her friend fall for someone she knows is bad for him, but he won't listen, and there's nothing she can do.
And I forgot to write down the backstory about her birth and what Lucifer had relations with in order to make her. I forgot to write that down, and the script is very long. So thank you everyone so much for watching, and an extra special thank you goes out to my patrons: JRDS, Immortal Jesse, Mercer Scott Holt, Anna J, Honey, The Fun Guy, Stephen Drake, J Draws, Quinn, and Silent Savvy. I have merch, I take commissions, check out the Patreon, and make sure to cannibalize the like button.